everybody. It's Monday, November 16th, and that means it's time for another episode of Chatting with Agnes and Cecilia. I'm one of your co-hosts, Cecilia. I'm a principal and founder at Road Tulips Nonprofit Consulting, and I'm here with my friend, colleague, and co-host, Agnes. I'm going to throw it over to Agnes to say hello.
Thank you, Cecilia. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our global audience, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Agnes Amos Coleman. I'm an author and a consultant. Over to you, Cecilia.
Great. Thank you, Agnes. And we are so pleased today. Our guest is Margie Bastolla of Margie Bastolla Facilitations, and she is a professional facilitator focusing on strategic planning. And today she's going to talk with us about building impactful relationships with the C-suite. So welcome, Margie.
Well, thank you, Cecilia. It's good to be with you and Agnes.
Well, we're so glad you're here. And Agnes is going to kick us off today with our first question.
That's great. Thank you, Margie. We wanted you to share with us, with our global audience, a little bit about your background, actually, because we're very interested. That would kind of fit into the topic itself. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Margie, and your organization.
All right. I am, as you indicated, Cecilia, I'm a consultant, and most of my work of what I do is I'm a trainer. I go into organizations and I teach a lot of communication skills and writing type workshops in the business community. My background is I spent almost 25 years in the association world working for a large not-for-profit global organization here in Orlando. And that organization mostly members were internal auditors and accountant types and audit professionals. And so before that, I was an auditor myself and all those fun and sexy type roles that you can imagine with that. But I've been in this field of training and development for most of my career, and I absolutely love it.
That's great. Thanks, Margie. You know, we're discussing today creating impactful relationships with C-suite. And I'm very interested in what are some of the key elements of making this happen.
Okay. Well, I think that when you're trying to create an impactful relationship, one of the first things you got to think about is, why would I want to do that? You know, why do I want to think even about the relationships that I have with, let's say, executives, or if you don't have regular relationships with executives in your organization, then maybe the next level up or a couple levels up. Why would I need those? And I think so much of that is because you want to have some influence that ultimately helps your organization. You need those executives to support you for a lot of reasons, whether it's you've got an idea that you need somebody to help you get implemented, or there's a strategy that you want to see go forward, or maybe you just need them to help you reframe some of your ideas. But I think that ultimately you want to have these relationships because you want to be impactful and provide the best that you can.
So, Margie, that's a great segue into my question. How do you define an impactful relationship?
Well, I think first it's a relationship that's based on trust. And you know, it's hard to have a relationship with someone that you don't trust. And so I think that's really the bedrock of it. I think that to have that impactful relationship, it's got to be one of mutual respect. It's got to be one where ultimately you can find some common goals in that relationship, whether those are professional goals or personal goals, but there's some common elements there. And I think too, in a relationship, you want it to be kind of interdependent. It's in a healthy way. It's not all giving one way without receiving from the other. It's not a taking advantage of or being taken advantage. It's a healthy interdependency. So basically it's trustful and it's respectful, and you have common goals, and you've got a healthy interdependence.
I like that term, healthy interdependency.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Margie, I know that you're also a facilitator.
Yeah.
In your facilitating role, how would you help or guide your stakeholders when you're in a facilitating role to be able to build trust? As you've said, I think it's very key. I think I made a note of that of one of the questions, so I'm glad that you addressed that. You know, when you're talking to your audience or the stakeholders or C-suites that you're facilitating, how would you help them and steer them through building trust with one another?
Oh, great question.
That's an excellent question. I think that first, whenever I go in and someone has invited me in to an organization to facilitate, whether it be they want to develop a new product line and they need someone to help them do that, or they need to make a decision, or they need to work on their strategies. I think so much of it is you've got to come in as open and receptive. And the way that I am as a facilitator and open and receptive is that I really show that I'm going to listen and that I'm going to hear all sorts of viewpoints. And then my goal as the facilitator is to help them take those, which might be disparate viewpoints, and kind of frame that out into something that's workable for them. I think so much of it is creating that openness and being authentic. You know, you're not in there to prove you're so knowledgeable and all of this, and you're a superstar facilitator and you know everything. It's really, I think, a more humble but confident approach that together we've got a goal today that we want to hit. Here's where we're going to get to, and here's the pattern or the framework we'll follow to get there. And to get there, you know, a river takes a lot of different paths as a river flows, but ultimately it's got a goal. It gets somewhere, whether it's the Gulf of Mexico or somewhere else. But we're okay with that. There's flexibility, and we listen to each other, and we're receptive. And I think that helps build that trust among everyone.
Sure.
Well, I'm sure you've had some difficult facilitations in the past.
Yeah.
Because I think we all have. So what are some of the things you do to try to bridge those gaps between people when maybe they're trying to prove themselves or they're not being authentic?
I think sometimes when people are kind of, I don't know if the word is reticent, sometimes it's combative, sometimes it's just that they're really convinced that their idea is important and they simply want to be heard. And I think that to be effective in that facilitation, which is in a way, it's building a relationship with that individual in that group setting, is that again, you have to ask questions of them so that they can open up and feel like they've been able to share their views. And then, you know, then I can say, well, Cecilia, I understand you're passionate about this. Tell me more. Why is this so important? Explain this a bit more to me. And then I capture that information. And then Agnes says, yes, but this is this. And I thought it was this way. And then my job is, after hearing from both of those, looking to see, is there a connection here? You know, are there some things that we can agree on? And then looking forward from that point, it's almost like in a negotiation. You don't want this and this, right? It's both kind of say what your needs are. And then maybe we get beside each other and, you know, it's kind of like together, let's look at the problem. And together, let's solve that versus, you know, East versus West, or, you know, me versus you.
So what do you do when there's a lot of tension though? Like there's some people, they're not like Agnes and they're not willing to listen. There's some people, they just won't, they're very tense. Maybe they have their own personal agenda.
Yeah.
So what are some questions you can ask them or some exercise, you know, that you could share without giving away the farm?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the first things for the facilitator to do is to maintain calm, you know, and to not get pulled into that. And just, it's almost like you're kind of separating yourself from it. You're being objective, you're listening, and oftentimes you're going to see people in the classroom that are going to jump in, and they're going to present other sides. They'll help you out as the facilitator. When they see that you're trying to make things flow well, they're going to jump in. Again, ultimately, it's letting that person that has something to say, let them say that. Affirm what you've heard them say. If there are good parts to that, that people, not just me, I'm the facilitator, I'm supposed to be neutral, right? But if there are things that others agree with, let them comment on that. And then asking, if I have to, you know, Cecilia, I see that this is really something you feel needs to be done. Are you open to listening to this other side? You know, it might even get to that. But typically, I find it does. And I think if the facilitator maintains calm, then that person eventually comes around. If they even feel a little bit of peer pressure, they'll say something like, well, I know I'm the only one talking, right? So
yeah, and maybe they're the only one with that opinion.
Right, they start seeing that.
Yes.
Okay, oh, Agnes, do you have something?
Yes, I was going to talk about the how the pandemic has really changed the way that we communicate. So our target audience, our global audience actually, they're going through the same issues of, you know, how are they impacting the stakeholders, whether primarily the C-suite. So Margie, how would we communicate in this kind of environment, this new normal of ours?
Again, I think it's being intentional.
Through Zoom, how do we make this? How we communicate in person is definitely different from how we're going to communicate using the technology tools that we have. So what are some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that whenever we're communicating with someone, we have to be intentional, you know, in that communication. First, there's a tendency these days, I think what I'm hearing from my clients is that their teams at work are all getting on these Zoom calls, and people are kind of done with this as a medium. They're over it. And so they start checking out in some ways mentally. So what they've had to do is, you know, they have to make sure that first they set an expectation, you know, that we all really want to talk. We recognize that this is not the way we'd love to, the way we'd really like to have it, but here's where we are. They make sure that there's plenty of times for breaks. There's times to laugh together, you know, and not, it's not all so serious, right? I think too, I teach seminars online, and you know, I do miss being in a classroom because you can almost feel the people. You can feel the warmth and the engagement, and it's really hard to feel that. But I think it makes it even more important than for me is to start looking at Agnes as a person, not just as a picture on the screen. I've got to remember, and by using her name, talking to her specifically, and then going back to Cecilia, because it's very easy that they just become this picture that's not real. I don't know if you've run into that. And sometimes I've run into that myself, and I've had to remind myself, I don't feel connected. You know, what's going on in my head? I know there's a physical issue because we can't be physical, but what's going on in here that's preventing me, you know? And so again, it comes back to that one-on-one is recognizing that individual, you know, that they're not a clump on the screen.
Well, I could see people falling into that. What do you think, Agnes?
I think it's a fantastic piece of advice for our global audience, because what you just said is spot on. It's just, it's the tide of the times, but we have got to make that difference if we're going to create impactful relationship with our C-suites. We have to recognize that, and we have to be intentional about that. So I think it's a great insight. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That is great advice for that connection. But unfortunately, we are actually at the end of our episode already.
Wow.
Yes, it's our time goes so quickly, especially with a wonderful guest like you, Margie. So thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom, and we hope you'll join us again on a future episode to talk about maybe post-pandemic learnings at that point. Fingers crossed.
I would love to. This, you know, and again, it's nice, you know, because I work out of my home, to have someone to look forward to seeing, you know, and so even to see you online and to know there's an audience out there, that it just feels good, right? We all crave that relationship. So
that's so true. So, but we need to wrap up. So,
okay.
Margie, what's the one thought you'd like our audience to take away today, and how can they contact you if they'd like to learn more?
Well, I think the one thought that I would like to leave with you is that, you know, we just can't put relationship building to the side. It's key for us, our success in our career. It's key for me as a person who's an entrepreneur. I have to have relationships with clients and potential clients. I have to make that a focus. I think even when we work for an organization, you know, we tend to think that everybody knows how good we are at something, and the fact is they don't. And I'm not saying go around bragging on your skills, but I would say make sure that you intentionally have connections with people, you know, when you know, talk to them in the hallway, but also, you know, let's invite people to lunch or whatever that is, but make it intentional. Pick up the phone and say hello to someone. The way you can contact me is to contact me at Margie, MARGIE, at mbf.training, and that stands for M for Margie, B for Bastolla, F for facilitation.training. And I do have a website at the same address, www.mbf.training. So if I can help you guys in any way, I'd love to.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Margie. Agnes, quick closing thought from you?
No, I just want to appreciate you, Margie, for joining us, and thank you for sharing your insight with our global audience. Thank you.
That's great. So we have to go rogue for now, everyone. But I want to thank Margie Bastolla again for joining us this week, and as always, my friend Agnes Amos Coleman for co-hosting with me on our show every week, and for arranging so many wonderful guests for this year. Thanks, Agnes. And if you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips Nonprofit Consulting, we work with nonprofits of all types. You can check us out at roguetulips.com. We also support the 501c League, which is a virtual membership organization for everyone in the nonprofit community and the people who love them. Check them out at the 501cleague.net. And I've heard through the grapevine, they're offering a CAE prep course in 2021. So watch for more information on that. But for now, we're going to go rogue, and we'll see y'all back here next week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.